you. Good afternoon, everybody. It is that time of the year again. It just seems like it comes quicker every year. But I first would like to thank all of our board members for making time to come in for a special call meeting to review the budget, and then also to acknowledge this fabulous team of folks who are in the room who have been working since really end of January, beginning of February to put together a budget. And you might notice that the format has changed a little bit and hopefully has made it a little bit easier for you to read through. Ms. Milner, thank you for organizing it in a different way. Ms. Milner, if y'all have not met Ms. Milner, she's our budget analyst and has been working side by side with Ms. Robinson, who was our executive financial manager, in preparation for the fiscal year 22 budget. So with that being said, we'll follow the same pattern. It's a little bit different than last year because we were sort of we didn't have the information early enough to even have a budget meeting at this time last year. If you'll recall, it was not until July or August before you approved a final budget going into fiscal year 21 because of the delay in the state appropriations. And so we feel pretty good, actually feel really good about the recommendations you'll see here. And I'm going to turn it over to Erica, who will walk us through the presentation in your notebook.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so today I'm going to do a brief presentation over the proposed FY22 budget. And so you can follow along in your notebooks. The presentation is there for you. And so first, I just want to highlight the significant components that have been added to the fiscal year 22 budget. On the revenue side of things, we did see, or we are going to see, a partial restoration of our amended formula adjustment, and we'll go over those numbers on the next slide. As far as the expenditures go, the things that we added to the budget to the proposed budget this year are a permanent pay raise or pay increase of 3% for all employees. We do wish to implement the final phase of the salary study. We also have added the purchase of active boards, and that is to replace those active boards that are not working or nearing end of life. And we have added back the cost of the SRO, which in fiscal year 21, the CARES 1 funding covered that cost. And so we have now added it back to the general fund for fiscal year 22. So those are the highlights of the fiscal year 22 budget. And so now we'll just go into the state funding, which is our QBE revenue. You'll see fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 21, so you can see the comparison from year to year. As I just mentioned, we will see a partial restoration of the amended formula adjustment. So you can see down there, the last row, it was $10.7 million that they cut in 2021. In 2022, the cut is going to be $4.3 million. So if you add all of those columns together, the net increase for fiscal year 22 is going to be $3.6 million. And some of those other rows, we did see a little bit of a decrease, and then also the local fair share, which is tied to the tax digest. It did increase for us because our tax digest is increasing. And so here we have our history of the M&O tax digest, and this is really just the history from the time that we began the recession back in 2009 up until fiscal year 21. Fiscal year 22 is there, but that is an estimate because we typically do not receive any tax digest information until after the budget process is completed. So keep in mind that number you see there is an estimate. We are estimated to have an increase in 2022 as we did in 2021 and 2020. But however, we did over that 11-year span when we went through the recession and when we were recovering from the recession, we did, our revenue was decreased during those years, during that 11-year span. And If you were to add all of those together, the numbers in red, that total is just over $96 million. So even with the 3 years where you see the increase, that increase is only about 19.5. So those are some numbers to consider as we go through this budget process. So next we will look at our expenditures for the FY22 budget, and this pie chart is broken down by category. So we have the categories of salary and benefits, textbooks and supplies, utilities and fuel, repairs and maintenance, computers and equipment, and then all other. And so what this pie chart tells you is that 87% of our budget, which the majority of our budget, is dedicated to salaries and benefits. And then the other categories are, obviously a lot smaller because most of we pay for people, so that's our budget. And it is in line with our current year budget, the budget that we're currently in. It was 87.98. And this year, the salary and benefits is 87.03. And because that salary and benefits is the biggest portion of our budget, I did break it down a little bit further by function code. And what that means is we have a state chart of accounts, and we have certain codes that we have to use for certain positions. And so for like the first one is instruction, and that's normally where we would charge our teachers their salary, where we would charge their salary. We would also charge our paraprofessionals to instruction. And then, it's a different group of people for each one of these line items. And so you can see that 69.77% of our salary and benefits is charged to instruction, which is where our teachers and our paras salaries are charged. So the majority of our salary and benefits are for teachers and paraprofessionals. If you look further and if you add up the top three percentages in this pie chart, which are for instruction, school administration, and pupil services, the total there is 83%. So 83% of our salaries are made up of instruction, pupil services, and school administration. And so what you have in school administration is your principals, your assistant principals, your school clerks, and your school bookkeepers. And then what you have in pupil services is your counselors, your social workers, your nurses, your prevention intervention specialists, and your psychologists. So all of those groups of people make up 83% of our salary and benefits for the fiscal year 22 budget. And this too, again, is in line with fiscal year 21's pie chart. The percentages are similar. And so on the next slide, we have our per pupil expenditures and our millage rate for fiscal year 20 compared to various districts, our surrounding districts. Newton, for fiscal year 20, our per pupil expenditure was $10,560. And what that includes is how they calculate that is it's all the expenditures. So your salary, your benefits, your textbooks, your supplies, your computer equipment, everything that we spend, and then they get the number of students, and then they perform a calculation to come to the per pupil expenditure. So for fiscal year 20, we were at $10,500, which put us at third from the bottom, and that is the same position that we were in for FY19 as well. And so lastly, we have two budget scenarios that I want to go through. The difference between the scenarios, I want to go ahead and mention to you the difference between the scenarios is that one scenario includes the permanent 3% pay increase and the other does not. And so Chart A, which is the first one, does not include the permanent 3% pay increase for all employees. So on this chart, you can see at the end of fiscal year '24, the recommended fund balance is $13.7 million. And if this chart were selected, the ending fund balance is projected in 2024 to be just over $28 million. On the second chart, which is Chart B, this chart does include the 3% permanent pay increase for all employees. The cost of that pay increase is just over $4.2 million for salaries and benefits. And so in this chart, at the end of fiscal year '24, the recommended fund balance is just over $14 million. And in fiscal year '24, this projected ending fund balance will be $15.6 million. And so those are the two budget scenarios that we have for you. And that is all that I have for this presentation. In your budget notebooks, there is a detailed general fund budget by function code, and so you can review that budget and see what all is included in the general fund budget. We also have the eSPLOS budget in your budget notebook as well. And so at this time, if you guys have any questions about anything in the budget, we can take those questions now.
Madam Chair, I have a question. It's actually related to conversation. So, and I should have brought my notebook in here from last year. I have the one from July last year in the car. So I thought I remember a dialogue of us talking about like pay increases and it not being able to be sustained and that we would be in the red within 2 years.
That was because we didn't have any of the information at the time, and so we were looking at, I can't remember all the way back, but we didn't get the state allocation until August?
We received the state allocation late, but we did not have any information as to whether that 10.7 million was going to continue from year to year. So we were on the conservative side, assuming that the 10.7 would continue from year to year because they didn't indicate whether it would or wouldn't.
Okay. I'm just trying to recall. Yeah, I'm just trying to recall the dialogue to see what changed from us to have that conversation in July of '21 to have this conversation. So that's all.
Yeah. Well, and we've gotten some of that money back that they took. So we got back $6 million of it going into the next fiscal year, so that would be helpful, but we're still down $4 million. And then the digest came in higher than we anticipated, and we made the adjustment mid-year. Remember, everybody got a pay adjustment in January, and so that is what happened.
Yeah, and it wasn't ever, I don't think any of us was ever against a pay increase.
No.
I think all of us had a concern with sustainability.
Absolutely.
And that was what the conversation was.
Yes.
So I was just trying to figure out why all of a sudden we don't have red lines now when we, less than a year ago, we talked about red lines.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so the only difference, just to clarify for myself, the only difference between A and B is this $4,208,350.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have one more question. I'm sorry.
Yes, no, go right ahead.
Okay, so I just thought about something else with the employees. This is inclusive of the new proposed positions as well? Okay,
Except for those connected to ESSER 1, 2, or ESSER 2 and 3, which you'll hear about in the board meeting.
okay.
Help me out, please. Comment, question? I don't know if I'm using the right term. The pledge for every employee to get $1,000, and that the remaining of those employees wasn't designated to get that. I'm trying to follow where those funds are.
They're not in the local budget, they're in the ESSER 2 budget, which is the federal CARES dollars. They're it's in that budget. You got that second document. And I actually think it's in your folder. If you look in your folder, Mr. Johnson, the maroon folder, there should be a stapled copy. And if you should pull that folder out. We want to make sure that we are very, very crystal clear that the federal dollars that we receive are over and beyond the state and local dollars, and that you don't want to mix those two up. And so the federal dollars will expire. So in your folder, Mr. Johnson, it's that other document right there that's on the top. If you'll flip it to page 2.
This one?
Yes. Flip it over, and you will see on the back of that, remember I said I would connect it to the agenda item so you could see it? If you look at, I think it's agenda item A, the very first one on that list, you will see that that's where those dollars are located. They're not in the general fund budget.
Okay.
And we'll have a presentation during the regular board meeting, that's what you're looking at now. And then Dr. Thomas will do a presentation, and then the items that are on the agenda are aligned to that document, because there are things that we need to purchase quickly so that we can have them in place for the fiscal year 20.
Those won't go in this one anyway, because this is 21, 22.
Right,
Right.
that is correct.
Yes. Does that make sense, Mr. Johnson?
I'll hold off.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions?
We're not asking for approval of the tentative budget until May 11th, so if something comes up between now and then, we're certainly, there's plenty, or May 12th, I think May 12th is the board meeting night. There's certainly opportunity for us to make adjustments or come back together and have a separate conversation. But it's a pretty stable budget that continues to recognize the fact that we are working hard to set our employees up to be competitive when it comes to salaries and benefits.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna keep on saying
Just-
one more every time I think of something.
Go right ahead.
Since this is fiscal year 21, 22, and let's say if Chart B is approved, then I just want clarity, that 3% would start July 1?
Correct.
Okay,
All,
yes. Well, so when do the bus, like, so people
it'll
not
start
on
July
salary?
22.
No, it starts
July 21,
Just July, the pay raise.
but when do they don't start getting
It-
paid until when?
Are you asking about a specific group?
Yes,
Like, can you give me a group that you're asking about?
whoever is not on salary and don't get paid on July 1, what group would that be?
Pretty much everybody except for the central office and principals, school principals. Everybody else will be your teachers, your paras, your nurses, everybody, your bus drivers would be, theirs would start in September because their pay goes from September to August.
So it would be, so July 1 would be central staff and administrators,
Yes,
and then everybody else would be September.
yes, except for APs would be August. I mean, there's different start times for different groups. So some people would be July, some people would be August, some people would be September.
But they're still gonna get the 3%, it's just that their contract
Yes.
doesn't actually start until September 1, so it'd be September till August of 20.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So when teachers leave, typically they get an extra, a paycheck
Right.
after they're out.
Yes.
Can we get a list of when those contracts are for those stated employees?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
So I know, Matt, I have a question. The QBE, based on attendance numbers, right? So do we anticipate maintaining the same amount of enrollment whenever the next So 2023's budget, we start looking at that. If there's a decrease in enrollment, wouldn't the
Yeah,
money go down?
it should, yes, go
Okay.
decrease. Just depends on, it because it's an average of 3 periods, three
Right, I remember
empty
it's
periods,
weird
so-
times, but
yeah.
But we're,
So
yeah,
technically, it could go down, but you may have more students show up at the first of this school year, which then would change the outcome. So you sort of prepare for the decrease, and hope that things will improve. But you also have to remember that when you have a decrease in enrollment, you also decrease the employee numbers as well. So it balances out. And people don't lose jobs, we do through attrition.
Okay.
That's how that gets balanced out.
Anyone else? Okay, continue on if we're all at it. There's a lot of information for us to take in, so, like Ms. Fury said, we've got until May 12th
Yes.
before we need to, so.
If there's anything you
if we
see,
can just continue to review it, and any questions you might arise, feel free to contact you or.
absolutely, just let me know. If you see something and you have questions, we're happy to talk about it. And if you feel like we need to meet again, we certainly can do that as well. But there's nothing in the budget that is like starkly or vastly different from the previous year, so. I'm just happy to be able to do the things that we're doing.
Do we need to go over anything else?
I have a question.
Okay.
East Plus, I see we have a figure in here for costs, $6 million for east side renovation.
That's what I was gonna say. Do we need to go over the East Plus section now?
Sure.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I didn't know.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's fine. You go ahead, Dr. Barr.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Robinson. All right, East Blos. We've set aside funds to renovate Eastside High School in preparation for the K-8 school moving there. That would also be supplemented with some state capital outlay funds, so we're still working through that process. It also includes security vestibules, access controls, which are now completely out of date, and so those systems have to be upgraded. The security camera project, this is the final phase, what is phase 2, as you may recall, but that is the final phase. Football helmets are out of date and must be replaced this year. School bus replacement, some funds set aside for that, replacement furniture, and then E-rate projects, which totals $15.6 million less E-rate reimbursement, and that's the projected East Blos collections for the next fiscal year.
Well, another question.
Yes, sir.
You got football helmets, that include all the high school and
Yes,
middle
sir.
school?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And back to the east side renovations. That's an estimate locally, or is that one from a contract?
That's just a local estimate right now, and so we've got to work through the process of all the work that needs to be done, and then work with the state capital outlay folks to secure some funding through that.
And this will be put out for bid?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's required. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Okay, so my question is about the football helmets. So all of them are out of date or old or need to be replaced. And this is just a question for clarity. I remember Al Kobe, they had tweeted they had new helmets, so did they just airbrush the old helmets?
That is my understanding. It's my
Okay,
understanding
I'm
that everybody is.
just making sure because
right.
they had a new design on their helmet.
Right,
And
right,
y'all know
yeah.
how my memory is.
Yeah.
I remember everything. And so I remember
Somebody
them.
does.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yes, they
Yeah.
just repainted.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because the tweet was new helmets.
Yeah.
It-
Well, I think it was new to them, a new design.
Okay. And Madam Chair, I have one more. Okay, so this is not, so I guess it's kind of related to renovations. It's not really related to budget, but can we have something in place? I know when we talked about years back, the transition of Eastside being available for the theme school. Some of the things that we discussed is that the theme school did not have certain sports or activities. They do have like intramurals like soccer, but I know specifically I used in that discussion years back that Cousins actually does not have a track, but Eastside does. And the theme school does not have a track team. The kids go to their zone school. So I just want to remind everybody that we need to have something in place for that, because we talked about the facilities or the schools that do not have that. I'm not sure if Indian Creek has one or not. I don't think they have because I don't think they had a track team one year. But those middle schools who do not have those facilities, being able to use the facilities over there now, because now you have a school that they don't have those activities, and the kids must go to the zone middle schools anyway. So just want to make sure that will be in place so that like we can have a happy medium when this transition happens.
Yes, ma'am. And that was part of the original presentation for the capital improvement plan.
Yeah, because I know we had just redid the track not too long ago as well.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the eSPOS?
I'm sorry?
Any other questions about the eSPOS section? All right. Then I think we have our advertisement in the very back. And that-
Yes, and that, the advertisement, once the tentative budget is approved, we do have to publish this in the newspaper. And so this is what you'll see in the newspaper when we get to that point.
All right, again, any other questions or concerns right now? If not, we can follow up with staff, between now and our next meeting on the 12th. Then do we have a motion to go out of session?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Emerson Bailey. And all in favor?
All
Aye.
right.